Now let's hear about your latest projects. We got a great question in from Dale in Happy Valley about choosing between different screws for a fence. Dale, I got you covered. That is a great question. You know, whether or not to use nails or screws when you're building a fence. Now let's talk about either one of these because they are very different in how fast they go in and how long they last. The first thing is with nails, they go in super fast. If you got an air nailer, you can cruise through and get that project done quickly. But on the back side of that, they also can come out really easily because screws just tend to hold better, especially when we've got our weather here where in the summer everything dries up, in the wintertime it expands out, so you can really push nails out. Now let's talk about screws for a little bit here and the coatings, which make a big difference. Whether or not you're using nails or screws, that coating on the outside is a really big deal because if it's galvanized and just a regular galvanized finish, it's going to streak down and make that fence not look so good, and then you got to start over again. Nobody wants to do that. All right, when it comes to finishes on screws, this is a big deal because you're going to see it. So when you're working on a cedar fence, it's just going to be natural. It's beautiful, right? You want to use a natural finish on this that has that tan color. That way it matches the board. It'll look good for years to come. Now, this isn't going to look so good if you're doing a dark charcoal or a black fence. So that's why you want to go with one of these black ones right here. That way it's going to match that stain that much more. Now, if you got one of the different colors out there, don't worry about having to go track down fasteners. Maybe just go with something that's going to be gray like this, that's going to be universal and kind of look a little bit more like the knots and stuff that are in the wood. That way, it's discreet. You just don't want to have a contrast with that. So really my answer is, if you're doing a fence, use a really good high quality screw. It's going to last the longest and look good for years to come. I recently got a Facebook message asking if I could do a quick segment on power nailers, and I thought that was a great idea. Here's a quick look at the different types out there. You know, that's a great question about power nailers these days. You know, battery technology has come a long ways, but let's talk about the pluses and minuses between using an air nailer or a battery nailer. In most cases, I prefer the battery nailer. But the thing is, when it comes to a framing nailer, for instance right here, which is gonna really be putting walls together, plywood down, that kind of stuff when you're building heavy projects, these work great. The disadvantage is the battery pack. They are heavier. So if you're using this all day long, it does get a lot heavier compared to hauling that hose around, but you don't have to worry about the hose. Now the one thing is when it comes to finished nailers, there's a lot to think about. You can get an angled one like this, and this is a 15 gauge nailer. So when you're looking at the gauge of finished nail, this is a big one here, as the numbers get smaller, they get bigger. So this is a 15, I can put longer nails in, so this is perfect for doing trim around the house, door trim, casement, that type of thing. But if I'm doing more like cabinetry work or really fine trim, that I want to have something that's going to be more detail oriented, doing something like one of these, which is an 18 gauge, puts a smaller pin in there, which means a smaller hole. So this or any of the micro pinners work really well. So it's really depending on what kind of project you're working on. You don't have to have all of these, but if you're just doing stuff around the house, the first one I would get probably is going to be this 18 gauge as far as a finish nailer. It makes life a lot easier, and most of the time you can get away with this, like I said, unless you're doing fine woodworking or cabinetry type projects. Now, the only time I stay away from battery power, because I don't think they're there yet, is a roofing nailer. When you have a coil roofing nail like this, I love the lightness of this, and you're running so many different nails through. I don't mind having an air hose go down, and it's just going to be a lot easier because you're using this a lot every day, and that air power to me works a lot better. But that's kind of my general thing with a roofing nailer. No matter what you're getting, I would not look so much at brand as I would pay attention to the platform you're using. It doesn't matter if you're a DeWalt person or a Milwaukee. If you got the batteries, you might as well use them. And if not, you might look at another brand that actually makes a nailer. But yes, if you're doing a lot of projects around the house, you can either go out and buy one or rent it. It'll make it so much easier.